All right. Okay, we are recording and I am going to share my screen. All right, we're going to get this. Get this going. Okay, you guys can see my screen, right? I'm going to exit out of that. Okay, flight planning. We got the. Okay, that's so much easier to just kind of get rid of all the extra little stuff. Okay, if at any point you guys have questions, please ask. But I'm just gonna start. Flight planning is like the best of everything because this is going to take you back to the very first week of FARS. This is going to take you back to the second week of, I'm pretty sure it was systems. And it's going to take you back to week 3 and a little bit of 4 with meteorology. And we're going to go to navigation. It just kind of takes everything and puts everything together. So that's why I love flight planning the best, is because we're just taking everything that you've learned so far over the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks now, and we're bringing it all together, and it's great, and it's just going to make things make so much more sense. Okay. Now I had you read everything that Jaden said, because again, if you try to memorize every single little step over the next 2 days, you're going to get overwhelmed. And that's not the point of this. The whole point is that this is an introduction to flight planning. We do a whole flight plan 1, is from start to finish, but I walk you through every single little step. And guess what? When you guys get to St. George, and when we start in person next week, we're going to walk you through every single little step again. So again, it's like the next 2 days, just an introduction, just so you can see what we look at, okay, everything that we have to look at, just so you don't feel blindsided next week and say, holy crap, I've never seen this before. So like he said, sit back, relax. If you want to try and follow along with your own dispatch release, that's totally fine. You might get to it might get to a point where you just can't keep up, and that's totally fine. Okay. But first of all, dispatch course files. Okay. Everything that you need for flight planning is in here except SkyVector. All right, SkyVector in your calculator, which you can do everything online if you really want to. I highly recommend just getting a binder, because everything you need for flight planning will be in your binder and on the drive or on your computer. Okay. But it's kind of nice having the binder, because the binder will include everything in here just printed out. So it's kind of nice having the flight plans just right in front of you, hard copy, and then with your computer, you're going to be working on SkyVector. You're going to be looking at the charts, and so it's kind of nice to keep those two separate, because flight planning, like with your dispatch release and your flight plan that you look at, it's just so nice to have a hard copy of that and to have that separated from where you're looking at jet charts and where you're looking at SkyVector and building a route and doing all that electronic stuff. So again, highly recommend just getting a binder. It makes it a lot easier. But some people, they are very particular and they want to keep it all electronic, and that's totally fair. People do make it work. Okay. We have at least one person every class who wants to just do everything electronically, and they do it perfectly fine. So if you want to keep it electronic, that is fine. That's fine. Okay. Like I said, everything that you need for flight planning, okay, everything is right here in the drive, right here under flight planning, of course. I'm going to walk you through every folder. You've already seen some of these things before because we try to introduce you to certain pages, like we've already done a weight and balance page before. You guys have looked at SkyVector before and built a route before. Now, of course, you're not going to really remember how to do that. And we don't expect you to remember how to do that until you actually start getting into flight plans next week. So next week is really when you actually dive deep into flight planning and you actually start to learn the steps. Okay. Today and tomorrow is really just an introduction to those steps because there are a lot of them. There's a lot that you have to make sure that you cover. Okay. Okay. Flight planning in this folder, these subfolders up here. You've already seen a couple of them because we've gone through charts. We've even looked at a flight plan before. But this first one are videos. If you just want to look at my face, I guess, these are just a couple of flight plans that we walk through. I tell everyone, be patient with these because I made these at like 11 o'clock at night. It's so, it's like, it's really just, something that you can look at if you happen to get to a point where you're like, okay, I don't remember how exactly to do this. So that's why we include some videos. We do need to update these videos because we like to update our flight plans. And so these flight planning videos are like, there are two flight plan 3 and flight plan 6. But guaranteed we've already updated some of the things, like specific things like MELs maybe. I don't even know. But we have already updated certain things on those 2 flight plans. So this is really just in case you need to walk through a certain part of the flight plan. Okay. And I just go through, this is just me talking, going through a flight plan. That's not, for a specific class or anything. So you don't hear anyone else talking. It's just, unfortunately, my voice and my face. So that is that first subfolder. This next one are these guides, the walkthroughs. I know that Jaden attached some of them, I think, maybe 1 or 2 of them. I didn't look at what he attached. I just paid attention to what he posted. But these are all your guides. Okay, everything that you need for pretty much every single step of flight planning is in here, and they walk you through it. It's like when I came through the class, we didn't have like any of these guides, and so it was a lot of note taking and a lot of rote memorization, and it's like we really just lay it out for you, every single little step that you need. Also, this very first, I'm going to go through each one of these, but this very first one, this is a release, a dispatch release. Okay. And it shows you where you can find every piece of information if you happen to forget. Okay. We are going to go through a dispatch release and we're going to fill this out over the next 2 days for flight plan 1. But if you ever get to the point where you're like, okay, you're on, one of these certain specific boxes and you're like, oh crap, where do I get that information from? You can come to this guide and it will tell you exactly where you need to look for that specific information. Okay. And it will remind you of different calculations. So like on this is the IFR flight plan page. This is where we do performance calculations. And if you happen to forget one of the calculations, you can just come here really quick and you can just remind yourself, okay, that is how I got that specific number. So a lot of spoon feeding here. Very, very nice guide to use if you need it. You're going to get to the point where you don't even need to look at any of these guides. And I promise you that. Okay. After tomorrow, you're like, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to figure this out. But I promise you will. Okay. So this very first one, that dispatch release, that is kind of walks you through where you find each piece of information, okay, for the dispatch release. This next one, the flight planning legs. This deals more of calculations, and so it deals with performance. You should have one of these, or at least one of these in each binder, okay? I know we were including one for each flight plan. We should still be doing that. I don't make the binders anymore, and so, but you'll have at least one. I like to personally just draw this out anyway, but some people like to utilize this page and actually put in the numbers for each section, which is fine. I like to personally just draw it out because I like to make it a little bit bigger. But flight plan leg calculations, we are going to do this tomorrow, but you will see exactly this pretty much. This looks really, really busy. A lot of numbers, a lot of explanations for each number. But tomorrow you'll see me draw my own and it will make a lot more sense. Okay, but this is for performance and we do the leg calculations for performance. All right, this third one. These are the flight planning steps. Now, this is a simplified one. Okay, so we give you all the steps for flight planning, and since this is the simplified one, this is really just you'll see on this next one that I pull up just the difference. So this is 2 pages of the flight planning steps. This next one, this is where we actually spell out every single little step, and so it's 5 pages long. So it's like, of course, the first step is always legal to go. And as you guys are professionals at legal to go now, but the first step is always legal to go. And on the regular flight planning steps page right here, we walk you through every single little step of legal to go. Okay. Now, when you get to the simplified steps, it's really just, hey, first step, legal to go, look at all this stuff. Okay. You're going to get to the point where you use these simplified steps, but just so you know, it's like, okay, step 1, legal to go. Okay, look at all this stuff. Well, when you look at the regular one, it's like, okay, legal to go. You have all these different things to do. All right, calculate the ETA. This is how you calculate it. Now, your destination airport, this is what we're going to look with destination airports. And this is what we're going to do tonight. Okay, we're going to do legal to go, and then see all of that stuff is all legal to go. And then there's step 2. So this elongated one, it really just walks you through every little thing and tells you where to go for each one with flight planning. So regular flight plan steps, and then you have the simplified flight planning steps. Don't worry about this Word document right there. This next one is ISA, and you guys are going to love ISA as much as I love ISA. So just so you know, it's like, don't worry, we're going to do ISA as far as flight planning, this flight plan 1, we're going to get to ISA and ISA deviation tomorrow. But we created this how to determine ISA and ISA deviation. We created this to walk you through finding ISA and then giving you an example of the calculations. And then the second part is finding your ISA deviation and giving you an example of how to do that. And then we give you even more examples, okay, with ISA and ISA deviation. So we're going to walk through this tomorrow. ISA and ISA deviation really deals more with specific airports and the performance, and so we're going to get to all of that hairier stuff tomorrow. Here is the last one, which is weight and balance and also fuel calculation. Okay, so don't just think, oh, this is weight and balance. This is also fuel calculation. And the very, very first step is actually finding your ETA. So we need to, I'm already in the process of rewording this, okay, giving it a different title, because this page is not just weight and balance and it's not just fuel. It actually includes a lot of different things with all these different steps. So this is actually what we're going to use tonight with calculating our ETA and being able to do our fuel calculation and kind of plugging that into our weight and balance page. Okay, but here's weight and balance, fuel, and ETA all on this weight and balance page right there. So there are the guides right there. Again, they walk you through every little step if you need it. Okay, and you are going to use it. You're going to use all of them for like the first like 3 or 4 flight plans. Don't even worry about it. So that is the second folder right here for flight planning. They're the walkthrough guides. Okay. The third folder, flight plans. You've already seen this before, all the flight plans that we have for our class. Now, really quickly, coming back here, this course completion checklist. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but this is kind of what a checklist that you can use to make sure that you complete everything. So up until this point, you've been working on weekly quizzes and legal to go quizzes, and then your study guides, right? You've been working on these first 2 bullet points right here. Now, by next Monday, you're going to have all of those finished, right? So you're going to be able to cross those off. You're going to be completed with all of those by next Monday. And next Monday, you're going to take your final quiz. So again, regular score 80% or above. Honestly, like some people get very overwhelmed thinking about the final quiz because it's a comprehensive quiz, right? The last 6 weeks. But if you have been filling out the weekly study guides, which are required anyway, it's like if you've actually been studying those, you're going to be totally fine on your final quiz. Okay, your final quiz is pretty much all of your weekly quizzes. Okay, so if you have been totally fine with your weekly quizzes, you're going to be totally fine for your final quiz. All right, so these first 3, they're all going to be finished by Monday. This flight plan 1, we're going to be finished with it tomorrow night. Okay, and then flight plan 2, we're going to hopefully start Monday night after you guys finish your final quiz. So flight plan 2, you're gonna already get down to this point by Monday night. All right. And then flight plan 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we require a full flight plan be done. And you're gonna understand that when I actually start getting into flight plan 1. Okay. We require the full flight plan for flight plans 1 through 6. As you can see in these parentheses, we do 3 of these flight plans together. Okay, so you on your own, of course, we're there for any questions that you have, but you will be working flight plan 3, 5, 6, complete flight plan by yourself, or, obviously working with other people, but you're going to be filling it out by yourself. And then we'll get your mock practical scheduled. But flight plan 7, 8, and 9, the only thing we require that you do is legal to go. Okay. So really just legal to go is obviously the most important part of every single flight plan. But flight plans 7, 8, and 9, we only require legal to go. We don't require anything past that. And that would make more sense once I start into flight plan 1. After that, we get your mock practical done. IACRA is done after your mock practical. We get your actual practical scheduled. You get your exam finished. You graduate. We take your picture. You give us a review because we really, really like feedback. Okay, we love your guys' feedback. We meet after every single class. We meet as instructors and we go over the feedback and we try to better the class. Okay. So we want you to be honest in your reviews. We want you to be honest with your feedback, and please tell us what we can do better, because we love that feedback. Okay. And then, of course, celebrate. You are a certified aircraft dispatcher. So here's your checklist. This is in every single binder. You guys have our numbers. You guys have our numbers anyway, right? Pretty sure the only number that you probably don't have yet is Kyler's number. So he was on the very, very first night 6 weeks ago. He was on the very first night for introductions. He was probably the shortest introduction, but he will be here in St. George for in-person. So in-person, you'll see Jaden, obviously me, Kyler, and you'll see Lindsay. You'll probably see Steve as well. I don't know of any other instructor schedules yet, but this next week, you'll see at least 3 of us, probably 4 of us. But anyway, Jaden already gave you the class schedule as far as what to expect. Just remember on Monday, 5:30, you don't need to show up earlier than 5, okay? Then starting next Tuesday, that's when it becomes 1:30, all right? And of course, Facebook review, Google review, give us a review, give us your feedback. There is your course completion checklist. So this will help you keep online to get everything finished. That second PDF right there. Okay, this first one is this blank aircraft dispatch release like you've seen before. Okay, if you're keeping everything electronic, if you're following along over the next 2 days, there is your blank dispatch release. This CRJ 700, these are the performance charts. So anytime we mention performance charts, we're going to come to these charts right here, okay, with our beautiful logo on the very first page. Now, this table of contents, it's great electronically because we have the sublinks in there. And so anytime you need to just go to a specific chart, climb charts, cruise charts, descent charts that we have available. Obviously, we don't have certain charts available, but these charts that we do have available, you can just click and it'll go straight there. Okay. And then at the top, towards the top of each page, there is another hidden link, and it will take you right back to the table of contents. So this is why some people prefer to keep it electronic, and that's fine. Okay. Because they really, really like this PDF. And this is Jaden's baby. He spent a lot of time getting all these links in there. So it makes it a lot easier for you guys to be able to go to all of these different charts that we have. But again, anything that you need to go to, I know that you've seen a couple of these so far. I'm going to give you some PTSD with takeoff performance. Remember, we looked at some of these spaghetti charts and we talked about takeoff performance, finding actual takeoff weight. But you've seen takeoff performance. I know that you've seen the passenger index table because we've done weight and balance before. And so we had to find our index, our passenger index. But the PDF, very, very user-friendly with all of these links in there. Okay. And so that's why some people like to just keep everything on the computer, just because unfortunately our binders don't have these links in there where you can just tap and it will go straight to it. So the binder will actually be hard copies of all of these charts. All these charts will be in the binder. But anyway, this is what we'll be using. We'll be using some of these tonight, but most of them tomorrow. So all these climb, cruise, and descent charts, these are all performance charts, performance numbers. And so we'll be doing performance tomorrow. Okay, so that is the performance charts right here, the CRJ 700 performance charts. So let's see, JEP charts, of course, you guys already know where the JEP charts are. Yay for JEP charts. Again, like I know that you guys walked through some things on SkyVector. Again, we do not use the charts on SkyVector. And if you don't even know that there are charts on SkyVector, then even better, okay? Don't use the charts on SkyVector, okay? Our charts here in the drive, we have specifically removed all of the RNAV stuff. So all of the RNAV SIDS and stars, all of the RNAV approaches, and for the, another thing is, half of these are in color when you open them up, so you can actually see what the space looks like around the airport. And with the charts in the drive actually show you what points are actually transition points. So we're going to get to that when we build a route, but it's like you guys have already learned about transition points. The charts in the drive here actually show you what points are transition points. The charts in SkyVector do not. Okay, and when we're building a route, it is imperative to get transition points off of your SIDS and stars. So to be able to do that, guess what? We utilize the JEP charts here in the drive. So again, if I can emphasize that any more, do not use the charts in SkyVector. Only use the JEP charts in the drive. Okay. All right. Any questions about any of these folders or any of these PDFs? All right. Okay. Well, let's get into it then. We're going to do flight plan 1. So I have a lot of these things already opened up, but this flight plan 1, this is what we are going to work through. Again, flight planning, we pull everything together from the last 6 weeks. So just remember, we're going to be referring back to FARs, and we're going to be referring to different systems. We're going to be referring to, obviously, we look at the METARs and the TAFs because we have to determine minimums, and we have to look at NOTAMs. I know you guys are going to just love NOTAMs, but we look at everything now because now we are planning a flight from Denver to Salt Lake City. Okay. All right. So what I do, I have these flight planning steps, and this is the long one. Okay. This is the long version that kind of walks you through every single little step. First of all, the first step, and always the most important step, okay, legal to go. If I could put like blinking lights around that, it's always legal to go. Legal to go, that is like pretty much the only thing that will really, really change with your flight plans is legal to go. Because what exactly do we look at with legal to go? Does anyone remember what we look at? As far as the Quizlets, does anyone remember what the Quizlets say with legal to go? Anyone remember? I can't see your hand, so go ahead.
I need to check my landed minimums at my ETE and ETD, sorry, and my takeoff minimums at my. Sorry, I mixed it up. Landed minimums
No,
at
you're good.
ETA,
You're good.
and yeah, takeoff minimums at ETD, and also landed minimums at ETD to see if I need takeoff alternate.
Very good.
And
Okay.
also check if I have any MELs on my aircraft and my NOTAMs.
Okay. Anything else?
What else?
What if I put an A there? What do you guys think? This is for everyone. What do you think that A stands for?
Alternate?
Yes, any alternates. Okay, awesome. Landing mins, ETA, right? Takeoff mins, and you'll see she also mentioned landing mins at ETD because we'll look to see if we need any alternates, right? MELs, no tums or no tans, however you pronounce it, and then any alternates. There is legal to go right there. Okay. Now, this long flight planning steps page, it's going to walk you through every single one of those little steps. Okay. When you look at, let me just go to this other simplified one. There's legal to go right there. Right. You're calculating your ETA because we're going to look at our landing minimums at our ETA. So destination airport, landing minimums, ETA. Departure airport, we're going to look at takeoff minimums. At ETD, any alternates that we might have, any MELs. And then while we're looking through all of that information, we're also looking at all of the NOTAMs. So there is legal to go right there. Simplified, but long version, we're going to start digging into this. So our first one, we're going to find our landing minimums at our ETA. Well, looking at flight plan, each flight plan, your ETA right here is blank. You have to go find the ETA. Okay. So the very, very first step, we calculate the estimated time of arrival. That is the very first step of being able to do legal to go. Finding our ETA. What is our ETA? So to be able to do that, we are going to go to SkyVector and we're going to put in our city pair, right? Denver to Salt Lake. We're going to get that direct distance from Denver to Salt Lake. We're going to take that, we're going to multiply it by 10%, right? That 1.1, because we're going to pad it. So this is really just, sorry, my phone keeps buzzing. We pad that direct distance by 10% because when we actually build the route, we're not just flying a direct distance from Denver to Salt Lake. We're going to be having some zigzags, right? We're going to find a SID, we're going to find a star. And so it's not going to be a direct line like that. So that's what we're going to do. Let's go to SkyVector. And again, you can follow along if you want, or you can just watch me do everything. And I don't expect you to remember any of this. Okay. I don't expect you to remember any of these steps by the end of tonight. All right. Okay, so SkyVector, always remember to be on world high. You guys have already played around with SkyVector. I know that you've built some routes, and that's great. So really just kind of watch me do this. So again, flight plan, we're going to open this flight plan box over here. We're going to put in Denver. We're going to go to Salt Lake. And that draws a direct line, right? This nice pink line here. Direct line from Denver to Salt Lake. If only we could fly direct like that, that would be great. That's not realistic because we are going to, when we build our route, we're going to find a SID and a star, and we're going to connect those points with jet routes and, you know, all that good stuff. But we get that direct distance right there, which is, let me zoom in, direct distance right here, okay, from Denver to Salt Lake. We haven't built a route in here at all. So this is just direct distance, 339.7. So 339.7. Now with direct distance, what we do is 339.7. I'm just going to round that to 340 and keep it simple for myself. Okay. You're going to notice with certain things we round and other things we don't round. Okay. With this distance right here, this direct distance, it's 0.3 miles off. And so I'm just going to round it to 340. And remember, this is our weight and balance fuel calculation, this step one. Again, this will kind of put it in, paragraph form of everything that we're doing right here. Okay. So this weight and balance form, we plugged in the city pair. We got the distance, Denver to Salt Lake's 339.7. We're going to round that distance up to the next whole number. In this case, we're going to round it to 340. So 340, step 2. We're going to pad that distance by 10%. Remember, we multiply it by that 1.1. So when we pad that distance, we're going to take 340. We're going to multiply it by 1.1. We get 374. Okay. So 374 is our padded distance. Now we're going to be calculating the time en route. Okay. We just got the distance. So now we just use that calculation, right? Time equals distance over rate or speed. So to be able to do this, we need our average speed. For this class, our average rate of speed is 400 knots, okay? We just give you an average rate of speed. Keep it simple. Don't overthink this. Obviously, our speed just changes all the time, and you're going to see that tomorrow when we do en route stuff. But our average rate of speed will just, all we're doing right now is just estimates, okay? Tomorrow is when we actually get to the actual numbers. Right now we're doing estimates. We're going to find our estimated time of arrival. So we're going to find our estimated time en route. So our ETE, we are going to do time equals distance over rate. We just found the distance. We give you your rate of 400 knots. So we're going to take 374 divided by 400. Okay, it gives you a decimal. Now, to be able to convert decimals over to minutes, guess what we do? We multiply it by 60. So time equals 374 divided by 400 comes out to a decimal, 0.935 of an hour, right? So 935 of an hour to fly from Denver to Salt Lake. Take that number and multiply it by 60 and convert it to minutes. And you're going to notice that we do that a lot. We're going to multiply and divide by 60 a lot, just because we're going from decimals to minutes and minutes to decimals, okay? So you're going to see that a lot with every single flight plan, just converting things over to minutes. We're going to multiply by 60, or to change it to minutes, we're going to divide by 60, stuff like that. So that will be very familiar to you over the next few weeks, is multiplying by 60 and dividing by 60, just because of time and finding things in minutes. So for our flight from Denver to Salt Lake, 56.1 minutes. This is where we say, okay, round this number up or down. Obviously it's just 0.1, so we'll just keep it at 56 minutes. So our ETE, our estimated time en route from Denver to Salt Lake, is 56 minutes. Okay, 56 minutes to go from Denver to Salt Lake. Let me zoom out just there we go. So Denver, Colorado, Salt Lake, Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, it takes 56 minutes, which makes sense because you're really just going over the Rocky Mountains over into the Salt Lake Valley. Okay, short flight, very short flight. So there is your ETE. So 56 minutes. I'm just going to write this right here. 56 minutes right there, ETE. Now, we already did all of these things. Now we're going to find our ETA. To be able to find our ETA, we add our ETE, okay, our estimated time en route, of 56 minutes. We're going to add that to our estimated time of departure. Our estimated time of departure is 2025 Zulu. We're going to add 56 minutes to that. Now, please don't do time calculation in your head. And I know that some people will still try to do that. You can use a time calculator on your exam. So just use a time calculator. Don't try and do calculations in your head. You have to do so many different calculations with flight planning that we tell you all the time, and you're going to hear us say this over and over and over, because even when you have a question, you're going to try and do a calculation in your head, and we're just going to look at you and say, where's your calculator? Okay, because just use calculators. Just please, just that human factor, right? You guys have been talking about human factors a little bit this week. You have to look at so much stuff. Don't work harder than you have to. Okay. You guys know me by now. I always say work smarter, not harder. Use a time calculator. And like you guys just saw, I just Googled time calculator and I just go to this very first one. Very easy to use. Okay, you're just going to use this portion right here. So this hour and minute, that's what we're going to be utilizing. So our ETD, okay, our ETD is 2025. So 2025. And what we're adding to that, okay, we're adding to it is 56 minutes. Okay, so 2025 Zulu, we are adding 56 minutes to it. Just hit calculate. And then it'll give you your ETA right here. Now, if you, on some flight plans, you end up going into the next Zulu day, and so it will have a 1 over here. Don't worry about that. That just means that you're going into the next Zulu day. But for right now, we are adding 56 minutes to our ETD, and our ETA is 2121 Zulu. Okay, there's our ETA. 2121 Zulu. There we go. We found our ETA. We had to do all of that to find our ETA, right? Go into SkyVector, get our distance. For our distance, we had to pad it by 10% or multiply it by 1.1. To find our ETE, we had to then divide it by 400, right? Because time equals distance over rate. That gave us a decimal. So we took that decimal and we multiplied it by 60 to change it over to minutes. And that gave us 56 minutes of en route time. We then took that 56 minutes, we added it to our ETD of 2025 Zulu, and it gave us 2121 Zulu for our ETA. So congratulations, you have now found your ETA. Now we get to do all the fun stuff with our ETA, right? Up until this point, we have given you your ETA on all of your legal to go quizzes, on all of your tasks that you've looked at, right? We've always given you your ETA. Well, now we get to figure this out. So just this will walk you through it, and you can walk through these steps right here. This will explain it in word form of everything that you need to do to find your ETA. Okay. All right. There's our first section right there. We found our ETA of 2121 Zulu. All right, now we are going to go to our destination airport, but I am going to give you guys a break. Okay. Go take a 10-minute break. Come back at 35, and we will start jumping into our destination airport. All right, I see some of you back. Let me know when everyone else gets back. All right, and jump back into this. Okay. All right. So we found our ETA. Okay. Found our ETA. We went through that this first section here on the first step of legal to go. All right. This next section is about the destination airport, right? With our landing minimums at our ETA. We finally found our ETA. So now we are going to go through the process of finding our landing minimums at our ETA. So with the destination airport, we are going to pick a runway, because picking a runway, and we put this before checking NOTAMs. So in the past, we other instructors, and you'll find your own little groove with this. But some people prefer looking at the NOTAMs before picking a runway. I highly recommend picking a runway before you look through your NOTAMs, just so you're not doing double the amount of work. Okay. Some people would look through all the NOTAMs to see what's there, and then they would go back and pick a runway, and then they would go back to the NOTAMs to see if there's any NOTAMs about their runway. And it's like, okay, let's cut out half of that work and let's just pick a runway that we could possibly use, and then go through our NOTAMs and see if anything affects it. Okay. So with picking a runway, what we need to do is we're going to look at our ETA. We're going to look at our winds. Okay. Now with, we're going to go into the charts, right? Obviously we need to look at the charts, but with the destination airport JEP chart, we're going to pick the longest runway available with a headwind. So before we get into the charts, let's go to our ETA and our TAF and look at the winds, okay, for Salt Lake. So flight plan, we now have our ETA of 2121 Zulu. So again, with each flight plan, you have all the information for your departure airport first. And then after all these NOTAMs, we go into our arrival airport or our destination airport. So we give you the 3 most current METARs for the most part. You might only have 2, but the most current METAR is always going to be at the top. And then we give you your TAF. So 2121 Zulu, that's my ETA, right? 2121 Zulu, and I can zoom in a little bit better. Looking at this TAF, 2121, it's going to fall into the first line, right? The first line of the TAF. So this first line of the TAF, this TAF was issued at 1935 Zulu, valid 20 Zulu on the 14th until 2400 Zulu on the 15th, right? So the entire 15th day. So 2121 Zulu, we are going to fall into this first line. We have, just looking at this weather right here, okay? Looking at this weather, winds are from 170 at 10 knots, greater than 6 statute miles, vicinity showers, scattered at 6,000, broken at 9,000. So our winds are coming from the south, so 170 at 10 knots. Our visibility is great, and our ceiling is 9,000 feet. Great. So for our winds, 170 at 10 knots. Now we are going to go into the JEP charts. Okay. For Salt Lake. All right, we're going to find our landing minimums in Salt Lake for the longest runway available for a headwind. Now, looking at these runways here. Runways in Salt Lake go north and south for the most part. We don't really even look at this very, very short runway that kind of goes northwest and southeast. So these longer runways, they go north and south. And as you'll notice with airports, you've probably already talked about this before. Airports are built, the runways are built to kind of line up with the general winds that they have each day. And in Salt Lake, for anyone who's lived in Salt Lake and has actually like paid attention, you'll know that the winds usually come from the south during the first half of the day, and then they switch and come from the north the second half of the day. Now, during wintertime right now, especially like yesterday and today, the last few days, we have these nasty jet streams that dip down really low during the wintertime, and they can bring those surface winds. They cause those surface winds to go crosswind for Salt Lake. So Salt Lake usually has nasty crosswinds during the winter. That's why I avoid Salt Lake. But anyway, if you'll notice, I don't know if anyone has looked at Salt Lake's TAF at all recently, just over the last week, but they've had some mostly crosswinds that they've had to deal with, besides the snowstorm today. But they've had crosswinds coming out from the west, winds coming from the west. But honestly, for the most part, throughout most of the year, they have winds coming from the south, and then like clockwork, in the afternoon, they switch and they come from the north. So that's why our runways in Salt Lake go north and south. So our winds from our TAF, 170 at 10 knots. If you look a little bit closer at these runways here, we have 16 right, 16 left, 17. So remember, when you are choosing a runway, the easiest way to line it up with your winds is take your runway number and add a 0 to it, okay, for the direction. So 160, 160, 170, and line it up as close as possible with your winds, and that will give you the closest headwind possible, okay? So 160, 160, 170, our winds are coming from 170. But now we want to look at the distances, right? The runway lengths, and we want to find the longest runway possible, right? The longest runway available that we could use. So 16 right over here is 12,000 feet. 16 left is 12,002. And 17 is 95, 96, so almost 9,600 feet. So out of these three, the longest runway available, okay, 16 left right here. We'll take that additional 2 feet if we can. So 16 left, that is our tentative runway right now. So we choose a possible runway, okay, and now we're going to go check the NOTAMs for Salt Lake. And then after that, if we have, we're going to see if anything affects 16 left. And then we're going to go to the approach plate. We're going to jump into the jet charts for the approach plate, and we're going to look at those landing minimums for 16 left. And then we're going to check our TAF and see if we have landing minimums at our ETA. Okay, that's, you know, something that you guys have been looking at for the last 6 weeks, landing minimums at ETA. Now we're teaching you exactly what to look at to find your runway and to be able to find those landing minimums, okay, your exact landing minimums. So we just picked our runway, 16 possible runway, right? We're going to see if there are any NOTAMs for it. So coming back to our flight plan. And you'll notice that I like to write all my information like everywhere, just because I forget. So I always, you'll just see like if you guys looked at my flight plans and looked at my dispatch releases, like they were just covered with information, and it was like repetitive information. It was like my runways were written everywhere just because I would forget which runway I'd chosen. So you'll notice that I write my ETA, I write my runways like everywhere. Okay, just because I don't like to keep flipping back and forth. So runway 16 left. Now I'm going to go through these domestic NOTAMs. Remember when we kind of went through NOTAMs, we introduced you guys to NOTAMs. What I like to do, and I'll change this color of this line. So this is what you can do is kind of create this little column here to help you focus on the specific word that the NOTAM is about. So remember, Salt Lake City Airport, obviously. These domestic NOTAMs are about the equipment at the airport, okay? What exactly is not working at the airport, okay? The airport itself. So again, we have the month, okay? The month is, as far as these NOTAMs go, the third month, and the 182nd NOTAM of the third month. Okay, so we have our NOTAM number right here. And then obviously Salt Lake City Airport, and we have an obstruction or an obstacle, and it's a crane. Okay, well, that's not going to, this is just telling me that there's a crane, okay, 1.33 nautical miles south of the approach end of runway 34 right. Okay, cool. All right, and it's flagged. This is not raising my minimums. This is not affecting my runway itself. So it's just telling me, hey, there's an obstacle. Okay, so this does not affect me as far as legality of my 16 left, my runway 16 left. So great, there's an obstacle. That's information for the pilot. All right, this next one. There's a taxiway, okay, work in progress surface paving, adjacent south side lighted and barricaded. Okay, great. More information for the pilot. Doesn't affect my runway. Another NOTAM for a taxiway between taxiway Kilo 1, taxiway Kilo 3, close to aircraft wingspan more than 171 feet. All right. We are a CRJ 700. Our wingspan is not more than 171 feet. But this is, again, more informational for the pilots, just to be aware, situationally aware of what's going on at the airport itself, okay? Obstacle or obstruction, tower, light, great. That's not going to affect my runway. I am looking for anything dealing with my runway itself or any equipment from my runway, okay? Taxiway, don't care. Apron, remember what the apron was? So one of you said it a couple weeks ago when we were talking about NOTAMs. What's the apron area?
Just our parking area.
Yeah, yep. Just the parking area. So don't care. All right, I'll make the lines again just because people like them. And maybe it helps you kind of focus on these words, right? The key words that we want to focus on. Apron, don't care. Taxiway, don't care. Apron, apron, apron. Obstacle, obstacle, obstacle. See how fast I'm going through these NOTAMs? This is how fast you're going to be going through your NOTAMs as well. Obstacle, obstacle, apron, apron, obstacle, obstacle, and obstacle. I don't have any D NOTAMs that affect a runway. No D NOTAMs, no domestic NOTAMs saying RWY 16 left. Okay, so no D NOTAMs affecting my runway 16 left. Now I'm going to go through the FDC NOTAMs, or the Flight Data Center NOTAMs, and I'm going to see if there are any FDC NOTAMs that affect 16 left. So FDC NOTAMs, these are the procedural NOTAMs, okay, Flight Data Center. Remember, these are the things that are there but that you can't see. So the procedures that you utilize. So this is where you're going to see the instrument approach procedures. You're going to see SIDS. You're going to see STARS. You're going to see obstacle departure procedures. All these different procedures. Okay. So instrument approach procedure for Salt Lake, we're approaching Salt Lake, right? Salt Lake's our destination. So I do care about instrument approach procedures, but I do not care about RNAV for this class. And I especially don't care about 34 left. Okay. So focusing on these 3 areas right here, right? You get your instrument approach, you get your actual approach acronym, or your procedural acronym, I should say, your procedure, what this NOTAM's about, and then you start going into the details of that specific procedure and see if it actually affects you. This one, don't even care. Okay, next one. Instrument approach, do care. ILS or localizer, we do care, but 34 left, don't care. Okay, if we were trying to utilize 34 left, then we would care about this, because this, when we go into the details of it, if we were trying to use the straight in localizer, okay, straight in localizer approach, right? When we look at these approach plates up at the top, we've seen them a billion times, but have we actually paid attention to them? It says ILS or localizer. So the full ILS approach or just a localizer approach for 34 left. So if we were trying to utilize 34 left and we were trying to utilize the straight in localizer approach for 34 left, then this would actually affect us, okay? Because then our ceiling is raised to 414, okay? Or in other words, 500 feet. And our visibility is raised to, since we're category C for landing, right? Our visibility is raised to RVR 4000. So if we were trying to use 34 left, then, and this localizer approach, then our ceiling would be raised and our visibility would be raised. Okay, but this is for 34 left. We don't care about 34 left. We want 16 left. So again, instrument approach procedure, we care ILS or localizer, but we don't care 34 right. Instrument approach procedure. Now this is ILS runway 34 right, but this is special authority for Cat 1, special authority Cat 2, and Cat 3. And this is specifically saying that these special authority approaches, these procedures are not authorized. We don't ever go into special authorized approaches in our class, okay? That deals... They're just different approaches, and we introduce you to regular ILS approaches. We don't go into special authority approaches, okay? You might, and that really depends on airlines, so that's why we don't go into it, because it's more airline specific. Once you get hired at your different airlines, then you'll start to learn which approaches you're actually authorized to do. Okay, so a lot of the majors have special authority approaches like this. So Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3. Regionals, I don't think I ever saw a special authority approach at the regional that I was at. Okay, so just so you're aware, it's like, this is why we do not go into these additional approaches, these special authority approaches, because that's more airline specific stuff. And we want to just give you a good foundation of basic ILS approaches, okay? Basic localizer approaches, basic VOR approaches, okay? All these ground-based approaches, all right? So this one would not affect us because, more specifically, it is special authority approaches that we don't care for this class. All right, next one. Instrument approach procedure, but it's RNAV and 34 right. Really don't care. Instrument approach, RNAV 35. This is a SID. Am I departing Salt Lake? No, I'm arriving into Salt Lake, so I don't even care about this SID for Salt Lake. Here's another SID. Don't care. Here's another SID. Don't care. Another SID. And another SID. Really don't care. Okay. Now, if they were stars for Salt Lake, then I would look at the details of it. Okay. I would look at the details of that NOTAM. But these are all SIDs. And I do not care one bit about SIDs for my destination airport. So we just went through all of the FDC NOTAMs. Okay. Once you get to Windsor Loft, that is the end of your NOTAMs. And we do not have any D NOTAMs or FDC NOTAMs for 16 left. Okay, so there's our runway, 16 left. Again, I like to put my information everywhere. So landing, we're going to be landing in Salt Lake on 16 left. Okay. So you'll just notice that I put all my information everywhere just because I don't like to go back and forth later. All right, so 16 left. We picked our runway. We went through NOTAMs for it. Now we're going to go to the approach plate. We're going to find our landing minimums for 16 left. And then we're going to check our TAF and make sure that we have that required visibility. Okay. All right. Zoom out of here. This is Salt Lake, so I'm going to go down to 16 left after all these SIDs and stars. Okay, ILS or localizer, 16 left. Here is our approach plate and coming down to the minimums. Okay, 200.5 for a full ILS approach, right? We love those full ILS approaches. We didn't have any NOTAMs talking about the glide slope being out. We didn't have any NOTAMs talking about the ALS being out or the touchdown zone or center line lights being out. We didn't have any NOTAMs affecting this approach or this runway. So our visibility is RVR 1800 or 1/2 statute mile. So now going back to our flight plan, we have greater than 6 statute miles. And we require 1/2 statute mile. So we can absolutely land at our ETA, right? 1/2 statute mile. Oh, let me get my text box back. 1/2 statute mile are the landing minimums. We have greater than 6. We are golden. It is beautiful at 2121 Zulu. So now we know that we can land at our ETA. And this is why we do landing minimums first. Because if we can't land at our ETA, we're not even going to go into the rest of this crap. Okay, there's no point. So if we can't land at our ETA, we don't look at anything else. We have to find out if we can even land at our ETA first, and then we start going in to all of this other stuff. Okay, and that's exactly why we get that question every once in a while. It's like, well, why are we looking at our destination first? Why not? Why aren't we looking at our takeoff, our departure airport first? And this is exactly why. Okay, if we can't land at our ETA, there's no point in looking at anything else. All right. Okay, destination alternate. We just found our landing minimums at our ETA. Now let's go see if we need a destination alternate really quick. So again, I highly recommend just writing out your ETA like this and doing your ETA window and actually writing it out, okay? There's just something different about having it visually in front of you so you can see it and figuring it out that way instead of trying to think of it in your head, okay? Again, there's so much that you guys have to think about with flight planning. Work smarter, don't work harder. So just write it out. So the hour before, all right, our 1, 2, 3 rule, the hour before is 2021 Zulu, and the hour after is 2221 Zulu. And we need 2,000 foot ceilings, right, and 3 statute miles of visibility. If we have at least 2,000 foot ceilings and 3 statute miles of visibility, we do not require an alternate. So we are looking specifically this 2-hour time frame from 2021 to 2221. This next line doesn't even start until 2 Zulu on the 15th. So guess what? Our 2-hour time frame all falls into this first line right here. Well, our visibility is greater than 6, and our ceiling is 9,000 feet. So we have at least 2,000 foot ceilings and 3 statute miles of visibility. So do we require a destination alternate? No, we don't. Okay. So we do not require a destination alternate. Okay. Now we're going to go on to departure report. Now we're going to look at our takeoff minimums, and we're going to look at our landing minimums, like was mentioned before. But kind of same process though. With our departure airport, first of all, we're going to go pick a runway. We're going to go to the jet charts for Denver now. We're going to pick the longest runway available with a headwind. Well, let's look at our headwind, right? Well, let's look at our winds in general for Denver now. So we just did our destination. Now we're going to go to our departure. So Denver, don't look at the METAR, look at the forecast, okay, what your forecast winds are going to be for 2025 Zulu. So our ETD 2025 Zulu, and just so I have it in front of my face. 2025, we fall into this second line here, okay, starting at 20 Zulu. Our forecast winds are from 120 at 11 knots, okay? Greater than 6 statute miles, great. Scattered 12,000, broken at 22,000, even better. Sweet. We have pretty great weather in Denver for our ETD. 120 at 11 knots. There's the winds. All right, now we're going to go to the jet charts. And instead of Salt Lake, we're going to go up to Denver. All right, Denver Airport, tons of runways everywhere, right? Runways in every direction. Yeah, Denver's another one of those airports during the winter. You get those crosswinds. Denver really, really loves to go north and south. Okay, they love it because going east and west, you only have 2 runways to work with instead of 4 runways to work with. So anytime Denver has to change to an east-west configuration, that's where you start to get really bad delays into Denver, because now they're down to pretty much a 1 runway configuration, because they use 1 runway to land and the other runway to take off. So really bad in Denver when you get the east and west winds, just because now they are going down to pretty much 1 runway. Okay. All right. Our winds are from, I already forgot, and that's why I'm going back, 120 at 11 knots. 120. So looking at all of these runways, 16s, right? 16 left, 16 right. We have runway 8. We have runway 26. We have 17s left and right. We have 35s left and right. We have 25. We have 7. We have 34s left and right. So winds coming from 120 out of all those. And if you guys ever get to a point where you have to like draw a circle and do like 360 degrees like I do every once in a while, there's no shame in that, okay? Just to figure out where my winds are coming from. But 120, remember you can add a 0 at the end of these numbers for the runways to match it up as close as possible with a headwind. So 120 or 12, well, we have 16s right here and we have 8 right here. 12 is right smack dab in the middle between those two. All the other ones are just a little bit off. So we have 16 right, 16 left, and 8. And now we're going to look at the distances, right? We're going to look at these lengths of these runways. 12,000 feet, 12,000 feet, well, 16,000 feet. We're going to take the longest one available. So let's go with 16 right. We're going to look at the NOTAMs now. We're going to see if there are any NOTAMs that affect 16 right. Okay. 16 right. And okay, our D NOTAMs. I can keep putting this column up if it helps you guys. People usually really like it. Apron. We already know what apron is. Okay. All right, these domestic NOTAMs, these D NOTAMs. All right, for Denver, this first one talks about a runway. Well, we care about runways, but we don't care about runway 26, right? We care about runway 16 right. So for this specific one, it says, hey, for runway 26, the PAPI is out of service. Okay, kind of talked about the PAPI last week when we were talking about NOTAMs and lighting systems as well. All right, this next one, Nav ILS. Well, we absolutely care about navigation, right? Navigation for the ILS runway 34 left. Well, we don't really care about that because we're using 16 right. This next one, Nav ILS runway 16 right is out of service. Well, would we care about this? We could. It could affect us, right? Now is when we are going to look at our valid time for this specific NOTAM. Obviously, we are departing Denver, so we're not going to utilize the ILS on departure. But what if we take off and we have an emergency and we need to turn right back around and utilize that same runway? But now, is the ILS out? Or is it not going to be? Is it going to be working or is it not going to be working, right? So now we look at this time, this validity time for this specific NOTAM. Remember, the first 2 digits are the year. The second 2 digits are the month. The third 2 digits are the day. And then the last 4 digits are the time. So this specific NOTAM is March 15th, 2018 from 8 Zulu until March 15th, 2018 to 10 Zulu. So for 2 hours, the ILS is going to be out of service for runway 16 right. 8 Zulu to 10 Zulu on the 15th, okay? Well, this is where we look at our departure date, and it is March 14th at 2025 Zulu. So does this NOTAM affect us? No, it does not, because this NOTAM doesn't even start until the 15th, and we are departing on the 14th. Okay, so that is how it could possibly affect you, is that if our ETD was during this time frame, then we have to think, okay, if we had to turn around and land back at Denver for some emergency situation, then our ILS would be out. Okay, so then we would just simply look for a different runway. I always say, again, keep it simple and don't overthink it. If I have a NOTAM affecting my ILS, instead of like digging into approaches and seeing what other approaches I could use for this runway, I'm just going to pick a different runway, right? I really, really like ILS approaches. It gives me the lowest landing minimums possible. And so if my ILS is out for one specific runway, let me see if I can use a different runway. Okay. All right, this next one talks about comms. Okay, communication, remote comm outlet. This frequency right here, 123.65, is out of service. Okay. It's not going to affect my 16 right. Okay, it's really just talking about remote transceivers, receivers, out of service. Okay, runway, care about runway, but this is for runway 7. Don't care. Apron, don't care. Apron, don't care. Taxiway, don't care. Taxiway, don't care. Runway, I care. 16 left, but we're trying to use 16 right. Taxiway, don't care. So I do not have any D NOTAMs that affect 16 right. And this specific one does not affect us because we are not within that time frame. Okay. All right. Keep going with these FDC NOTAMs. Instrument approach. I'm not approaching Denver. The only reason why I would pay attention to an instrument approach procedure for Denver is in that emergency situation, if I needed to, after takeoff, if I needed to turn right back around and land, then I would absolutely pay attention to these NOTAMs. So instrument approach procedure, but don't care about RNAV. Instrument approach. Don't care about RNAV. Instrument approach. RNAV. See, this is exactly how fast you guys can go through your NOTAMs. You're really just figuring out, okay, what's this NOTAM about? And then the specific details about that procedure. So instrument approach, ILS or localizer, but it's for 34 right, or 34 left. Okay, and I am thinking 16 right. Instrument approach, RNAV. Instrument approach, ILS or localizer, but it's for runway 7. Instrument approach and RNAV. And that is the end of our FDC NOTAMs, our procedure NOTAMs. So D NOTAMs, FDC NOTAMs, we don't have any that affect 16 right. There's our runway right there. And I'm going to put that right here so I don't have to keep coming back to it. 16 right. All right, so now guess what? We've found our runways for both our destination and our departure airports. And we've already gone through all the NOTAMs. See, it's like NOTAMs tend to be kind of like the necessary evil for some people. And I totally get it. But once you start to get really good practice with kind of focusing on what you need to look at and figuring out kind of if it affects you or if it doesn't affect you, it's like once you get that down, you can just kind of breeze through all of these NOTAMs, okay? But these specific NOTAMs, like we don't have any affecting us, and we've already gone through all the NOTAMs. We already know that we don't have any NOTAMs that affect us. Either runway, right, that we've picked, either airport, no NOTAMs that affect us. Okay. Now, still on our departure airport, we've checked the NOTAMs. Now we're going to go to that approach plate, right? And we're going to go to the 10-9 alpha because with Denver, we need to look at the takeoff minimums, but we also need to look at the landing minimums. In case of that emergency situation, we need to turn around and land back at Denver, okay? That's why we look at both. So we're going to go to the jet charts. We're going to go back to 16 right. We're going to look at our minimums, okay, our landing minimums, and then we're going to go up to that 10-9 alpha chart and look at our takeoff minimums. So back to the chart for 16 right. And Denver is another big airport with lots of SIDS and stars. Oh, 7, 8, 16 left, and 16 right. All right. Hamburger style, not hot dog. Here is landscape. Okay. Again, we've done the hard part of looking through the NOTAMs, right? We don't have anything affecting our minimums here. So our landing minimums are 200.5. Just going back to our TAF really quick. Okay. Just looking at our ETD, we have greater than 6 statute miles. And then also looking at our current visibility is 10 statute miles of visibility. we need a half statute mile in case we have an emergency situation and we need to come back to Denver. We currently have 10 statute miles of visibility. So are we worried about being able to come back to Denver? No, we are not. So do we require a takeoff alternate? No, we don't. Okay. 10 statute miles in the METAR, 10 statute miles. And this is the most current METAR. So 1953 Zulu. Our ETD, we're leaving at 2025 Zulu. If we take off and all of a sudden we have whatever happen, okay, mechanical, medical, whatever, and we need to turn right back around, guess what? We're leaving at 2025 Zulu. The next METAR is going to be issued at 2053 Zulu, right? They're issued hourly, right before the top of the hour. So our next METAR isn't even going to come out until 2053 Zulu. So if we had an emergency situation where we needed to turn around, we would be on the ground, back on the ground in Denver by the time the new METAR even came out. Okay, so that's why, oops, sorry. That's why we look at this 10 statute miles right here. We don't want to look at the forecast. The forecast gives us an idea, but when you are looking as far as a takeoff alternate, okay, when you are determining if you need a takeoff alternate or not, look at the most current METAR to get that visibility right there. Okay, takeoff alternate. Okay, get that ingrained in your brain. If you are looking at if you need a takeoff alternate or not, you are looking at the current conditions. What is happening right now? All right. Now, when we looked at this chart, it says a half statute mile. Okay. If your METAR, instead of 10 statute miles, if it said 1/4 statute mile visibility, well, you require a half statute mile to land. So in this case, would you be able to return to Denver? No. You would, in this case, you would need a takeoff alternate. Okay. Anytime your weather is below landing minimums at your departure airport, you need a takeoff alternate. All right. I'll get rid of this because I don't want.
You would need
go
the
ahead.
ceiling as well, right? You also need 200 feet. Ceilings are better.
Okay, just think of landing minimums though. When we talk about landing minimums, okay, going back up to landing minimums, only visibility is required.
I thought that was only for legal to go at ETA.
Yep.
The destination.
We are doing legal to go right now. Okay, we're still on legal to go. But when you are looking at landing minimums, okay, only landing minimums. Okay, so when we're looking at landing minimums right here for our for our departure, right? Landing minimums, only visibility. Okay, so takeoff
We're not
alternate.
to takeoff alternate yet. Got it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So keep that separate. We're not talking about alternates yet. We're just talking about landing minimums in general. Okay. So everyone just keep that separate. Landing minimums is only visibility. But then when you get to alternate stuff, that's when you're looking at the ceiling as well. But landing minimums, only visibility. So when you're thinking, do I require a takeoff alternate? Just come to this most current METAR. And if this visibility is less than your lowest landing minimums, right? Your lowest landing minimums, then you will need a takeoff alternate. Okay. So any of these huge airports, obviously we have ILS approaches. We don't have any NOTAMs affecting these approaches. So your lowest ILS minimums are a half statute mile, right? For visibility, half statute mile. If your most current METAR says less than a half statute mile, If it says a quarter, if it says an eighth, if it says a 16th, then you require a takeoff alternate. Okay. All right. You may or may not have a flight plan that says less than a half statute mile. All right. So, but you will determine that with your most current METAR. Okay. With takeoff, when determining takeoff alternates, all right, when you're looking at that, you come to the most current METAR and look at that visibility. All right. Okay. We just answered that question really quick. If we needed a takeoff alternate, we do not. So now really quick, let's look at our takeoff minimums for 16 right. That was our, okay, good. I always forget, you guys, I always forget the runways that I pick. Don't, like, laugh all you want, I don't care. I always forget them. So with, oh, let me go back to these flight plan steps. Okay, now we're gonna go to this 10-9 alpha chart. We're gonna look at takeoff minimums for 16 right. So now we just looked at those landing minimums to see if we needed a takeoff alternate. We don't. So now back up to the 10-9 alpha chart. Here we go. And Denver, again, Denver is a huge airport, so lots of runways everywhere. 10-9 alpha, remember this additional runway information that really talks about the lighting systems that you have, more about the specific runways, about the length, about the glide slope, about the width, okay? The takeoff minimums are going to be below that or after that information. So takeoff and obstacle departure procedure. Depending on the airport, some airports kind of include all runways together. Denver has a bunch of different runways, and so you'll see that they actually separate them. So we just need to find 16 right here. So 16 right, takeoff minimums right here. Again, it's kind of right to left, right? So standard takeoff minimums, we have 2 engines, hopefully 2 engines, on our CRJ 700. The takeoff minimums are RVR 5,000 or 1 statute mile. That's just standard, okay? But we actually have op specs, okay, our operation specifications that allow us to go lower than 1 statute mile. So with our different lighting systems, remember, we've already been through the NOTAMs. We don't have any NOTAMs that affect anything for our runway. So when this says, hey, all these different lighting systems in here, if you have these working, any of these working, you can go to our adequate visual reference here, which is RVR 1600 or 1/4 statute mile. Okay, so just taking off, this is just taking off. We can go all the way down to 1/4 statute mile or RVR 1600. But we also have an additional op specs saying that we can go down even lower than 1/4 statute mile. So now this gets into more detail about these specific lighting systems. It's like this first one, adequate visual reference, says, okay, this lighting or this lighting or this lighting, you can go to 1/4 or 1600. But now when we go even lower, this says, okay, this specific lighting during the day or this lighting or this lighting. You can go down to 1200, 1200, and 1000. Now we can go even lower than that, okay? Our center line lights, or, all right, we can go down to runway, or RVR 1000. But guess what? For our class, our op specs allows us to go down to RVR 500 with the center line lights and the high intensity runway lights. Okay, the center line lights and the hurls, we don't have any NOTAMs saying that those are out. So we can go all the way down to RVR 500 just to leave Denver. Okay, we can take off with next to nothing visibility. Now, again, would we be able to turn around and land with next to nothing visibility? No. That's when we would require a takeoff alternate, okay? But this is just to take off from Denver. We can take off in next to nothing visibility. That's why when Denver is like socked in with fog, has really, really dense fog sometimes, you can see that planes are still taking off. No one's landing, but planes are still taking off. And it's because as long as you have this OpSpec authorization, you can take off with next to nothing, okay? You're taking off straight into the fog. You can still take off legally. You just can't land. All right? So you'll see this as you start to dispatch, especially into Denver. You'll see, or even LA, okay? LA, Seattle, even Atlanta. We get some fog rolling into Atlanta every once in a while. And when the RVRs get really, really, really crappy like this, okay, the RVRs get really crappy, planes can still take off, but no one's landing, right? Unless you have like a Cat 3 approach and you're landing, the plane's landing itself. All right, so runway 16 right, the takeoff minimums, RVR 500. Well, we've already looked at our METAR a lot. 10 statute miles of visibility. We can definitely take off. And if we needed to, we could turn around and land back in Denver. Okay. So always those two questions with your departure airport. Can you take off? And if needed, can you turn around and land? Okay. So I already answered this question if we needed a takeoff alternate, which we do not. Now, this next section, if you do require an alternate, okay, which you will in other flight plans, when you require an alternate, this will walk you through picking an alternate, okay? So we do not require an alternate on this flight plan, so I'm not going to go through this, but you will require alternates on other flight plans, okay? All right, our next one, MELs. If we had any MELs, they would be at the bottom of your flight plan briefing packet here. After all these NOTAMs, here's your winds aloft, and then we give you images of weather to just kind of introduce you to more of what to look at. But we do not have any MELs on this flight plan. Let me open up one really quick just so you kind of know what to expect when you do have an MEL. All right, after all these NOTAMs, here is your MEL on this flight plan, okay? So this is kind of what to expect. Obviously, you have the same format for the MELs. It's just the information is going to be a lot different for each MEL, okay? But this is where it would be located after your winds aloft and before your weather. You will see an image, right? You'll have your MEL right there. We do not have any MELs on this flight plan. So you don't have to worry about MELs for this one, but if you did, this would walk you through it. You would look at your MEL and see how it would affect your flight, and if it has any limitations on it, okay? Any restrictions. You just look at your MEL itself. Okay. Now, if I could put blinking red lights around this, I would. Okay. If I could. This is the end of legal to go right here. Okay. If you find anything that is not legal to go, find a solution and talk about it privately with an instructor. Okay. The instructor will determine how to proceed. Do not proceed with the flight plan until the issue is resolved. If you, let's say, if you had an MEL that kind of kept you from being able to fly, that's a problem, right? It's not legal to go. And so find a solution, a possible solution, and then bring it up to one of us instructors. We will talk about it with you, and then we'll tell you how to proceed with your issue. Okay, we'll tell you how to proceed to keep going with legal to go. Do not ever assume that you know what's going to happen. Okay, this goes for your practical exam with the DADE as well. You are most likely going to come across problems, right? Especially with legal to go. You're going to come across, maybe you don't have landing minimums at your ETA. Maybe you have two MELs that conflict with each other. Maybe you have a NOTAM saying that your airport is closed. Okay, you're going to come across all these different problems, and you cannot assume that you know what's going to happen. Okay, your DADE, your instructor, your DADE is going to tell you what's going to happen. Okay, so anytime you come across a problem, and you will have problems, obviously this first flight plan, we don't give you too many problems to worry about, but as you keep going with flight plans, you are going to come across different issues that make you not legal to go. Whenever you come across those, think about what could possibly happen, right? Find a solution, find your own solution for it, and then take that to an instructor and say, hey, I have this problem, and we will say, okay, what's a possible solution? And we'll talk about it with you. Again, that goes for the DADE as well. I had a couple of issues on my practical exam with my flight plan, and I just stopped. I immediately just stopped, and I brought the issue to my DADE and said, hey, I have this issue. I can't keep going until it's resolved. And they'll say, okay, how would you resolve it? And then I would give them my solution that I came up with, and they would say, okay, good, keep going. Or they would tell you something totally different that is going to happen. Okay, but you are not going to assume that you know what's going to happen. Don't ever do that, because, and you'll find you'll find that different instructors, obviously you're going to have like 3 or 4 instructors there at a time. You're going to find that different instructors do different things. So we don't just have a specific solution for each flight. Each dispatcher finds a different solution to make it legal to go. So that goes with our instructors as well. Each instructor kind of does things a little bit differently as far as finding solutions. So don't ever, if you happen to listen to somebody else talking about their issue that they have, and their instructor tells them to fix it a certain way, don't assume that's going to be the same way for you. Okay? So if I could put blinking lights around this, I totally would. Once you find a problem, just stop, take it to an instructor or your DADE, and talk about it. And the instructor or the DADE is going to tell you how to proceed. Okay? I cannot emphasize this enough. That's why I wish I could put blinking lights around this. All right. Well, there's legal to go right there. We went through our landing minimums. We found our landing minimums at our ETA. We had to find our ETA first, right? We found our landing minimums. We could land at our ETA. Then we went to takeoff minimums at ETD. We went through any possible MELs, which we don't have. We went through all of the NOTAMs. And then we went through if we require any alternates. So now we can answer, are we legal to go? Yes, we are. We are legal to go for this specific flight plan. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you a dinner break. After dinner, we are going to come back and we are going to start, we're going to continue on with this specific form, and then we are going to go into building a route. And hopefully by the end of the night, we're going to finish our weight and balance. And then tomorrow, we are going to go into picking a flight level, doing ISA, doing our IFR flight plan with performance numbers, and filling everything else out. Okay. But for the rest of after dinner, we are going to do this specific form. We're going to build a route, and then we're going to do weight and balance. Okay. All right. What do you guys want? Do you want? The flight planning always takes it out of people. So do you guys want 20 minutes? Yeah. All right. Come back in 20.
Alison, can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
You said about the takeoff minimum, right?
Yes.
In 3 section, one of them it says day, and then there is one section it doesn't say day, and then the final one is the ILS. Now my question is, if it says daytime, you can go lower. What is the next one is mentioned? Is it to do with any time or night or anything like that?
And anytime. So it's always anytime unless it specifies daytime only.
So the third column will says is day. That's we only focus on the daytime for that column, and
Yes.
not the middle one, because the middle one doesn't say day. That says anytime.
Correct.
Understood. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all.
You're welcome.
Okay. Have a good break.
You too.
Thank you.
All right. Let me know when you guys get back. Do. Okay, let me share my screen again. All right. Okay, coming back to these flight planning steps. Just to remind you, everything that we've done so far, we have done legal to go, right? We just determined that we are legal to go with this flight plan 1. Now with legal to go, that very first step that we had to do was finding our ETA. To do that, we went to SkyVector. We put in our city pair because we got that direct distance from Denver to Salt Lake. We padded it by 10% because eventually we are going to build a route that includes a SID and a STAR jet routes. But before we do that, just that direct distance, we just pad it by that 10% and then divide it by that 400 knots, that average rate of speed that we use for our class, 400 knots. That gave us that 56 minutes en route, okay? We converted that decimal, right? Remember that 0.935 of an hour? We multiplied that by 60 and that gave us 56 minutes. We added that 56 minutes to our ETD and that gave us our ETA. Again, use a time calculator because you have way too much to do. And the last thing that you want to do is try and do time calculation in your head. After we found our ETA, that's where we went to our destination airport. We picked a runway, find the longest runway available with the headwind. We picked our runway, we checked our NOTAMs for that airport. We found our landing minimums and we checked our TAF. And again, when you're looking at any landing minimums, it is only visibility that is required. After that, we looked at our 1, 2, 3 rule to see if we needed a destination alternate, which we did not. And then we went into our departure airport of Denver. We picked our runway for Denver. We checked the NOTAMs for it. We found the landing minimums and takeoff minimums, right? So takeoff minimums to see if we could take off. And we have already found that we can pretty much take off in next to nothing visibility for Denver. We found the landing minimums for that specific runway in case we needed to turn around in an emergency scenario, whatever is going on, in case we needed to turn around and land back at Denver, could we do that? And then answering that question of if we need a takeoff alternate, and we did not need a takeoff alternate. We did not have any MELs for this specific flight plan, and that is it. So legal to go. Remember, I always, when I took the class, I just memorized LTMNA. If that helps you, obviously just another acronym to add to the billion acronyms, right, in aviation. But LTMNA, I just memorized that for my legal to go. Just landing minimums and ETA, takeoff minimums at ETD, MELs, NOTAMs, and then if I needed any alternates. So if that helps you, then great. If you have another way of remembering legal to go, then great. I think anything that helps you remember all of this information is awesome. Okay, again, coming back to this note, if you find any problems, okay, anything that is not legal to go, just stop, take it to an instructor or your DAID, and they're going to tell you how to proceed. All right. You're going to hear us say this over and over in person. So don't get too bored with it because you're going to hear it. Okay, next, we're going to fill out this form, takeoff, destination, and alternate requirements form. So this is part of our dispatch release. So far you've seen me just put runways in there because I didn't want to have to try and remember them, because as you already know, I don't remember them. So the takeoff requirements, alternate destination of that form that we're going to fill out is right here. So this form, takeoff destination and alternate requirements form. This is what we're going to fill out right now. And we fill it out right now because we've already been looking through the JEP charts. Let me go back to the JEP charts here. So we've already looked at like takeoff minimums. We've already looked at weather. We've already looked at landing minimums. We've already looked at all of this different stuff, right? So this is why we fill this out right now. If you happen to forget and you leave it till the very end, there's no problem with that. With each flight plan, you're just going to fill out one of these dispatch releases completely. So as long as you fill it out. But as far as the flight planning steps, that is step number 2, is this form right here. So use JEP charts and flight plan packet. Remember, you reference the dispatch release reference guide. Fill this out while determining legal to go, because that will help your with the decision process. And it's really just out of convenience filling this out as you do legal to go, just because you're already looking at all this information that we're going to fill out now. Okay, it's really just for convenience. So when it says reference dispatch release reference guide, that is talking about, really quick, I'll show you this walkthrough, this dispatch release guide, okay, this reference guide. So if you, again, if you ever get to a point where you're like, okay, I cannot remember for the life of me where to find the information, you can always come here and it will show you. So this is why it's saying reference this form if you want. Takeoff destination alternate requirements form. If you start filling this out and you just can't remember where you got that information, which it will happen because there's seriously so many things that you have to look at. But if you happen to forget, you can always come here and it will say, hey, those standard takeoff minimums are on the 10-9 alpha chart. Okay. And these, any alternates, you know, anything that you need to reference back to, you can come here. So this is that form that it's talking about right here. Reference the dispatch release reference guide. Okay. Okay, let's fill this out now. All right, departure airport. You are going to notice that, sorry, let me get all caps here. You're going to notice that we repeat ourselves over and over and over and over again when we are filling out a dispatch release. Okay. When you get to an airline, then the computer fills all of this out and it's great. But now, right now, we are teaching you how to do it manually only so you guys can pass your exam. And after you pass your exam, then you don't have to do it manually like ever again. Okay, so departure airport, Denver, estimated time of departure. That was that 2025 Zulu. And again, if you can't remember, it is on your flight plan briefing packet at the very beginning. Your ETD right here. Weather at estimated time of departure. Okay. I'm gonna go out here. Our weather. So our weather, our estimated time of departure, it's really just going to be this current METAR. Okay. These are the very current conditions that we have. Now, if you happen to put the forecast conditions in the TAF, that's totally fine too. Okay. Right. We plan on these forecast winds. We get an idea of what's forecast, but then we also have this most current METAR that gives us the actual conditions at the airport. And so, what I'm going to do is something that we can't do when we're writing it out. Copy and paste. So there's my weather, estimated time of departure. Remember, my departure is about 25, half hour after this current METAR was issued. The next current METAR isn't going to come out until a half hour after I've left. So these current conditions in this METAR right here, that's what I'm basing everything off of, right? What is actually happening right now? So there is my time of departure weather right there. All right, runway for Denver was what? 16 right. 16 right. All right, now we get into those takeoff minimums that we are actually looking at for Denver. Okay, so going back to the JEP charts, 10-9 alpha chart, that's where we get the takeoff minimums. And 16 right over here. Now remember, we have standard right here, and then we have adequate visual reference, but we can go all the way down to RVR 500 with our op specs. So just kind of keep that in mind. Our standard takeoff minimums, remember that was that 1 statute mile. Our adequate visual reference, now this is where it's specifically asking RVR and visibility. So the adequate visual reference, RVR 1600 or 1/4 statute mile. So RVR 1600, and let me type it correctly, or 1/4 statute mile. Now is when we get down even lower, right? According to our even more op specs, right? We have to have an op specs that allows us to go to adequate visual reference, but we also need an op specs that allows us to go even lower than that. So remember, anything that's lower than the standard takeoff minimums, you have to have an op specs authorization for it. Okay. All right. So coming back here really quick. This specifically says center line lights and high intensity runway lights. So the CL and the HURLs. When we look at the takeoff minimums, look for CL and HURL. Okay. And that specifically says RVR 500 across the board. So over here, we can do 500, 500, and 500. Centerline lights and the high intensity runway lights working for our touchdown zone, our midpoint, and our roll out. I have a little typo here with too many L's. All right, so there is our departure airport right there. Okay, so standard takeoff minimums for 16 right, and then lower than standard takeoff minimums for 16 right. Okay, next one, departure alternate airport. Well, guess what? We don't have a departure alternate. We don't have a takeoff alternate. So we do not need to fill this out. But say we did have one, okay? Let's say we're leaving Denver. So let's say we added Colorado Springs as a takeoff alternate, okay? So takeoff alternate, we'd put COS for Colorado Springs. Now this estimated time of arrival is at our takeoff alternate. Colorado Springs is like a 10-minute flight from Denver, right? So we'd figure it out as far as the exact minutes, but it's really just like a 10-15-minute flight from Denver. So we would add that to our time of departure, our estimated time of departure. And that gives us our estimated time of arrival at our takeoff alternate. And then we'd go and figure out the weather for our takeoff alternate. So we'd figure out the weather for Colorado Springs. And then we'd do the same kind of process where we would pick a runway. We'd go through NOTAMs, right? So we'd have our runway number here. And then this specifically asks if it's grooved or not, and plus for a headwind or minus for a tailwind. So grooved, you're going to find at this additional runway information over here. So Denver specifically, obviously these are the charts for Denver. Usually on other charts, you'll find that information if it's grooved or not down here with the runways. Okay. But Denver, all of their runways are grooved. So they just put it in this general information that all runways grooved. Okay. Really quick, I'll open up just Colorado Springs so you can see the difference with the 10.9 alpha chart. Okay, so all these different runways at Colorado Springs, okay, additional runway information, they specifically say, hey, this one's grooved. Hey, this one's grooved. Grooved, grooved. All right, so that's where you usually find the information. Denver is just a little bit different. They just include it in this general information up here. They just say all runways grooved. So that is where you would find that information. And then, so you just put a G for grooved or not. And then you would put a plus or a minus depending on your forecast winds and if you're planning a headwind or a tailwind. Okay, so it would either be G plus or G minus. So grooved with a headwind or grooved with a tailwind. Instrument approach, the instrument approach that you're planning on utilizing at your departure alternate. So if it's an ILS approach, if it's a localizer approach, if it's a VOR approach, whatever the instrument approach that you're planning on utilizing. And then for that instrument approach, the localizer identifier and frequency, if you have any NOTAMs affecting that runway or approach. And then since it's an alternate, we're going to do the 1 or 2 NAVAID rule. And we just simply put 1 or 2, and then the alternate minimums that we derive for that takeoff alternate right there. We don't have a takeoff alternate for this flight plan, so we don't need to fill this out. Now, our next section is destination airport. So, destination, Salt Lake. Our ETA, remember our ETA was that 2121 Zulu that we figured out. Now, weather at estimated time of arrival for Salt Lake, right, our destination, we're always looking in the future. So we're looking at the forecast. So now in our flight plan packet, we're going to go down to Salt Lake's TAF. We're not going to look at the METAR. We're going to look at the TAF right here. So our forecast weather right here, I'm just going to do a quick copy and paste to make it easier. That is that forecast that we were looking at for the winds and for the visibility. And then we did our 1, 2, 3 rule to see if we needed a destination alternate. So that is the weather that we are planning on utilizing. Okay, for Salt Lake. Now, 16 left for Salt Lake. Now we're going to go into the 10.9 alpha chart for Salt Lake. We're going to see if 16 left is grooved or not. And then we've already looked at our winds. We're planning a headwind. So we're going to put a plus down here. And then we're going to go into the approach plate itself, and we're going to find all of this additional information, okay, for 16 left. So JEP charts, we're going to go to Salt Lake now. SLC. Okay, 10.9 alpha chart. We love that 10.9 alpha chart. Okay, all right, this additional information over here. A good example as well because it looks a little different even from Colorado Springs. So remember, Denver, it included the information up here in general. Colorado Springs, it included it kind of like this right here where it just said grooved, right? And then Salt Lake here, we have other runways here, and you have a little note. So you see these numbers in these black circles, and you just so we're looking at 16 left. So this note 2 runway grooved right there. Okay. So 10-9 alpha charts, obviously we have the same information, but it just might look a little bit different depending on the chart. So runway grooved for 16 left. So we are going to put a G, and then we are planning a headwind. Okay, so a plus for a headwind. 16 left, we're going to go down to the approach plate now. Bear with me, all these SIDS and stars. Okay, 16 left. We are planning, remember, a full ILS approach, right? Full ILS approach. ILS right here. Now we need the localizer identifier and the frequency for that approach. And that is found up here in this box right here. The localizer is IMOY. Okay. And here's the frequency, 109.5. So IMOY and 109.5. Just double checking myself. There you go, right there. And NOTAMs. We didn't have any NOTAMs. So you can put dashes, you could leave it blank. Some people put N/A. I try to avoid using N/A because when you get into aviation, you start looking at NOTAMs. That typically means not authorized, right? So I don't put NA on there. Some people do, and I don't think twice about it, right? When people do that. But you could just leave it blank. I like to just put a dash in there just so that tells me that I've already looked at it. Okay. So that's really just for myself saying, hey, Allison, you have already looked at the NOTAMs and you already know that there are no NOTAMs affecting this runway or approach. If there were 1 or 2 NOTAMs affecting it, all you have to do is put the NOTAM number in there. Okay. Remember the NOTAM number, we would just use this first number right here, whatever that number is. So then whoever's looking at this can say, oh, 03182, right? So they just come here and go 03/182 and just read that NOTAM. All right. We don't have any NOTAMs, so I personally just put a dash. Landing minimums. All right, back to our approach plate for landing minimums. We have 200.5. So you can just put 200.5 statute mile, or since it's landing minimums, if you just put a half statute mile, I'm totally fine with that because that's really all that we are paying attention to with landing minimums. All right. So there is your information for Salt Lake. We have our yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, are there scenarios where we would select more than one runway? Just I'm seeing 2 spots there, so I was just curious.
Like for your destination, you're not really going to pick 2 runways. For your alternates, you might. So for your destination, don't worry about it. But now if you came to an alternate and you did the 2 navigate rule, you would have 2 different approaches, right?
Yeah.
So
okay.
there's your scenario of when you would utilize both of these lines. Both of these lines here is when you're utilizing the 2 navigate rule. Okay.
Cool.
Good question. Destination, not worried about it. I'm planning on this runway. I don't have any NOTAMs affecting it. Okay. I'm only going to use this runway. Destination alternate. We don't have a destination alternate, but same process as departure alternate. Any alternates, right? You're just going to put your alternate airport in there and then your ETA at your alternate. Okay, be it takeoff alternate or destination alternate, your ETA at your alternate. not your ETA at your destination. So it's like we talked about the takeoff alternate. Your ETA at your takeoff alternate would be from your departure airport to your takeoff alternate, right? Your departure alternate airport. Now your destination, your ETA at your destination alternate airport would be from your destination airport to your destination alternate airport. Okay. So destination alternate, if we had an alternate for Salt Lake, let's say we plan Provo, right? Provo's just down the road from Salt Lake. If we plan Provo as the destination alternate, this ETA, right, this arrival time at Provo, we would really come with 2121 Zulu coming into Salt Lake, and then add however many minutes it takes to go from Salt Lake to Provo, which Salt Lake to Provo is like another 10 to 15 minute flight, maybe less than that. And so you would just add that to your destination ETA, and that would give you your ETA to your destination alternate. Okay, this will make a lot more sense when you actually have an alternate and you go through that process. But just some things to kind of be aware of. Okay, just to get you a little bit more familiar with this dispatch release. But same process with this destination alternate, right? Your runway, if it's grooved, headwind, tailwind, instrument approach, localizer, identifier, frequency, if you have any NOTAMs, and then 1 or 2, so depending on the NAVAID rule that you use, and then your alternate minimums for that specific alternate. Okay, so not landing minimums, your alternate minimums. So there is takeoff, destination, and alternate requirements form. All right, so just a little bit more information about each airport and the approach that you're planning on using, the runway and the runway information for each of the airports that you're using. Pretty simple though, pretty straightforward. It's really just once you get into this, it's like, okay, where do I find this information again, right? Especially coming down to alternate airports and the destination airports, like, okay, where exactly am I going to find this information? So again, you can always refer back to that guide that will tell you exactly where to go. So there is step 2. We filled this out. Now we are going to build a route. Okay. All right. So now building a route. You guys have already built some routes in SkyVector. Hopefully you have anyway. You should have by now. But building a route, remember with building a route, okay, just kind of keep this as a mental rule for yourself. Building a route, just always find a SID, always find a star, and then connect those two with jet routes. Okay, so keep that just kind of as a rule with building a route. Don't go crazy with building a route. Just keep it as simple as possible. Keep it as direct as possible. But find a SID that makes the most sense. Find a star that makes the most sense. And then with those two, connect those two with jet routes. Okay, keep it that simple. Some people, they get to in-person and they start building routes and they go crazy with it. And it's like, you don't need to do that. You don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. Okay, don't overthink it. Just remember SID, star, jet routes. That's all you need to remember with building routes. Okay. All right, so let's go build a route for Denver to Salt Lake. So again, we're using SkyVector here. Right now, we just have the city pair in there, but now we're actually going to build a route in here, right here. So let's go find a SID for Denver, right? A standard instrument departure. And I always say find a SID and a star that make the most sense for your route, because you're going to have multiple SIDs and multiple stars to probably choose from, especially with these bigger airports. They have multiple that you could choose from. Find the one that makes the most sense. Okay, so think about, where am I leaving from? Where am I going to? Which direction am I going? And build your route from there. So Denver, going back to SkyVector. Let me zoom out quick so you can see the bigger picture. Denver over here, going towards Salt Lake over here. Okay, we're going westerly. We're going in a westerly direction. Okay, mostly west, a little bit northwest. So west northwest direction. Just remember that when you're starting to build a route. Okay, what direction am I going? Because I want to make the easiest route possible for that specific direction. So SIDS into Denver. Let's pick a SID that makes the most sense. This starts with stars. I don't want a star into Denver. So I'm going to scroll down until I find SIDS. Arrival, 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 arrival. So many SIDS and stars. Okay. Now, Denver to departure. Up here in that top corner, top right corner, says SID. All right. This is a standard instrument departure. Do we remember what this specific departure is called, though? What kind of SID is this?
Vectoring.
Yes, very good. It's a vector SID, meaning, here's the airport right here, okay? Meaning we are going to, if we utilize this SID right here, we'd take off from Denver, whatever direction, depending on the winds, and then we would be vectored directly to whichever VOR we choose, okay? Whichever VOR we choose on here, we would be vectored directly to that VOR and then go from there, okay? No transition points, no official authorized transition points on here. It's just vectoring. So it kind of adds to ATC because now they have to worry about vectoring you, okay? They're giving you a little bit more attention. Well, guess what? This is why we like SIDS with transition points, because it relieves a little bit of that workload. They don't have to worry about vectoring you as much. So a vector SID, it does work, but we highly prefer SIDS with transition points. And that goes for stars as well. We love the stars that actually give us transition points. So going to this next departure here. The nice thing about Denver that you'll notice is that their departures are directional, okay? So this is the Yellowstone 4 departure. It goes north, right? It tells you right there. Obviously, you can look at these lines here and see which direction it's going towards, but all of these transition points, remember how to recognize transition points? How do we recognize transition points? I can't see hands, so just talk.
They're in the parentheses.
Yes, 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 yes. Always look for these parentheses. Always, 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 always look for these parentheses. This specific SID has tons of transition points, right? So Natty is technically a transition point. It's not a VOR. So we really, really like VORs because then we can hook to a jet route. But Yellow or Medicine Bow, MBW, Medicine Bow is a transition point. We have parentheses right here for Laramie, LAR. Laramie's a transition point. Cheyenne is a transition point right here. Rapid City is a transition point. Scottsbluff is a transition point. Hankey is technically a transition point, but we very much prefer the VORs, right? The VORs are going to connect with jet routes. So we have lots of transition points on this SID, but think, okay, what direction are we going? We are going mostly west, right? So let's find the west departure. This departure, the Pikes 2 departure, is to the south. Okay. This Plains 1 departure to the east. And Rockies departure to the west. All right. Here is the SID that makes the most sense, right? This is why I always say, find the SIDs and stars that make the most sense. Could we utilize these other ones? Yeah, we could. If maybe we were trying to route around weather, right? Maybe there's weather all along the Rockies over here on this western side of Denver, which happens all the time in the summer. Okay, maybe there's crappy weather over here. And so we want to route around the weather, which is always a sign of a good dispatcher when you're routing around the weather. Okay, so in that scenario, we could utilize this Yellowstone 4 departure to go north of the weather. Or we could utilize this Pikes 2 departure to stay south of the weather. Okay, so we could utilize these other departures if it makes the most sense. Well, we don't have any weather on the west side of Denver right now. So this Rockies departure is going to make the most sense for us. All right, zooming in, we have lots of transition points. Okay, we have RLG Kremling, right? We have parentheses right here. We have EKR, which is Meeker. We have Red Table, DBL. We have Red Table as a transition point. We have Montrose as a transition point. We also have, going further, Dove Creek. And we also have Blue Mesa, HBU. So lots of transition points to choose from. Which one are we going to choose? Well, we can actually look for them and see where exactly they are. So I'm going to go find RLG and then Meeker. Because remember, Denver's over here, and remember, I'm going northwest towards Salt Lake. So it's like I could utilize these other ones if I was routing around weather or if I had an ATC reroute or something like that. But right now, I'm not going to worry about those right now. And so I'm going to find the thing that makes the most sense. So I'm going to go find Kremling just to show you. And then I'm going to find Meeker and we'll go from there. Oh, and I already forgot Kremling. RLG. So up here in this top left corner in this search bar, I'm just going to put RLG right there. I'm going to hit enter. When I hit enter, sorry, you see this plus sign right here in the center. I don't know if you can see it because it's very small. And it's not like bold or anything. And it's just black. So it's hard to see. It's just small. It's like, it just kind of blends in with the rest of the jet routes and everything. But when I hit enter, this plus sign is going to center on Kremling VOR. Okay. Right here. So let me zoom out of here really quick so you can see it better. All right. Zooming in. Kremling VOR right here, RLG. Now, this is technically a transition point, right? But if you notice, is it connected to a jet route? This jet route is off of the VOR, right? It doesn't run through it. This other jet route is north of the VOR. So always remember to take that into account when you are choosing your transition point. Does it connect to a jet route? Kremling is a transition point, but is not connected to a jet route. So I'm going to go find where Meeker is. EKR. EK. Oh, there you go, Meeker. Look at all these jet routes coming out of Meeker. That looks great. and I still have my pink line visible. So that means that I'm staying in that same direction towards Salt Lake, right? So Meeker, in my opinion, Meeker makes the most sense. Looking at this, leaving Denver, going towards the west, and coming all the way to Meeker. Jet routes, so that's great. So what I'm going to do is, the nice thing about transition points, this information in the parentheses, it tells you exactly what to type into SkyVector, unless the chart has been updated. And when they update charts, they only update the number. Okay. So right now, this specifically says Rocky 6 EKR. What we can do, the only time we would reference these charts over here is when we want to see if it's been updated or not. So departure procedures for Denver, Rockies 7. So it's this Rockies 7 departure. It's been updated once. So instead of Rockies 6, I'm going to put Rockies 7 and then EKR. Okay. I put my SID name, and then I put my transition point right there of Meeker. When I hit enter, it's going to plan it into my route, and it's going to change Rocky 7 to a nice orange brownish color. And so that means I put it in there correctly, and it's planning it. It's planning that SID right there. Okay. All right. Let's go pick a star, and then I'm going to give you guys a break. Okay. So 4 stars. We're going to go to Salt Lake now. Okay. We're arriving into Salt Lake. We're going to have the same process of finding a star that makes the most sense coming into Salt Lake, and the same process with finding a transition point that makes the most sense. Okay. All right, so Salt Lake City start, Bear 5 arrival. Okay. These are, yes, directional, but it doesn't tell you which direction it's coming from. So you have to figure that out. This Bear 5 arrival, here's the airport, right? This Bear 5. We're coming from the east. It's coming from west. So if we were coming from Reno, or if we were coming from San Francisco, if we were coming from the, we'd probably be on this Bonneville 2 arrival into. Coming down, Brigham City 5 arrival. Well, that's coming down from the north. It also comes over from Rock Springs. So again, like if we were planning around weather, maybe there was weather over, I don't know, maybe there was weather over the, you went to, right, the mountains over on the eastern side of Utah, northern Utah. If we were planning a route around that mountain range, trying to get around weather, maybe we would plan this arrival, right? Maybe it makes the most sense to come up towards Rock Springs and then come down to Salt Lake. All right. So it just depends. Find the one that makes the most sense. Delta 6 arrival. Well, that comes from the south. We're not coming from the south. You'll notice anyone from Utah, you're going to recognize all these names, right? Bryce Canyon, Beaver, Milford, Delta, Salina. You'll be coming in from these different points. If you were on a flight from up to Salt Lake, then you might be on this arrival going into Salt Lake. Okay. Jammin' 5 arrival, same thing. Coming from south. St. George, Cedar. arrival. This one, ooh, look, this one comes from the east. Well, that makes a lot more sense coming from the east. All right, let's look at transition points. We have, oh my gosh, look at this. Meeker is a transition point for the arrival as well. It is already a transition point for our SID. Guess what? It's the same transition point for our star. So why not just utilize that same transition point? Remember, this is such a short flight, right? A 56-minute flight. Such a short flight. It's going to be, it might not have any jet routes because it's so short. And in this case, we are going to go from our SID right onto our star. So Meeker, now a little bit differently for our star. Remember, for our SID, it started with the SID name and then went to the transition point. Well, now for our star, you're going to start with the transition point and then the star name. Okay. So Meeker, EKR, and then Spain 8. Coming back to SkyVector really quick, I'm just going to make sure that it's still the Spain 8 arrival. And sorry, I have to zoom out a little bit. Spain 8. It is still the Spain 8. Now, since Meeker, this is a unique kind of route because we are going to go from our SID right onto our star. Since Meeker is already in there, you don't have to put it in twice. If you happen to put it in twice, it'll just delete it. Okay, it'll delete one of them. So all we really have to do is put Spain 8 in there. Hit enter. When I hit enter, it's going to change Spain 8 to that orange brownish color and plan that as the star. So now, when we have our route here, we're starting at Denver. SID goes all the way to Meeker here. And as you notice, as you are like hovering over your route, this is going to highlight as well. Okay, that's the nice thing about SkyVector is when you hover over a certain part of your route, it is going to highlight it at the same time. So our Rocky 7 departure goes all the way to Meeker. At that same point, we are going to transition right onto our star, which is the Spain 8 arrival into Salt Lake. So guess what? There is our route right there. Denver, Rocky 7 to Meeker, EKR, to Spain 8 into Salt Lake. Nice, short, sweet, to the point route right there. So again, you guys know me. I put my route everywhere. So this filed route right here on the very first page, that is our filed route that we're going to send to ATC. And ATC is going to love it because we have a simple SID in there with a transition point, and it happens to be the same transition point with our star. So guess what? ATC has to like do nothing. Okay. They see this, they're like, oh, they're on this SID and right onto the star, and they're going to Salt Lake. Great. They know exactly where you're going to be. ATC would love this route right here. Okay. You don't even have to worry about a jet route in there. Now, if we happen to need a jet route, then we would go Rocky 7 to EKR, Meeker, and then we would zoom in and say, okay, what jet route makes the most sense coming out of Meeker? And I would follow the jet route, right? The specific one is J116. So if we were going a little bit further than Salt Lake, then we could go J16 all the way to Fairfield, VOR right here. But then we would have to jump on a different jet route, right? because J16 or J116, sorry, 116 only comes to Fairfield, and then we have to either go north or south. It doesn't keep going. So you'll see that with Flight Plan 2. Flight Plan 2 is a longer route than just Denver to Salt Lake. So Flight Plan 2, that's where you'll see us starting to zoom in and starting to find jet routes. We like to keep Flight Plan 1 just simple to introduce you to building a route within a flight plan and finding a SID and finding a star that make the most sense. Okay. But there is our route right there. Rocky 7, EKR, Spain 8. So I put that right there. I'm also going to not put it right there. I'm going to come to the IFR flight plan. And in this filed route box, I'm just going to paste it right there as well. Because I would do that tomorrow anyway. So I already have it copied. Why not just paste it right there as well? So there is our route right there. All right, let's take a break. And after we take a break, we are going to come back and do weight and balance. Okay. Go take, you know what? Let's do 12 minutes. Come back at the top of the hour. All right, guys, let me know when you get back. We have one more section for tonight. And it's something that you guys have already seen, something that you're already familiar with. I don't know if you've seen it more than once. Hopefully you have. Weight and balance. Have you guys seen weight and balance more than once? I know I've gone through weight and balance with you guys. I just don't know if anyone else has.
I think you were the only one, I think.
Okay. And that's fine, because we're going to go through it again tonight. And you guys are going to do a weight and balance with every single flight plan that you do. Okay. Weight and balance, it tends to be the section that people pick up the quickest because it's so straightforward. It's pretty simple of where you get all the numbers from and just doing simple addition, subtraction, and just graphing it out. So pretty simple. And we will do our weight and balance for this flight plan. Okay. All right. Weight and balance. Let me get back here. Okay. All right. Weight and balance. Okay. With weight and balance, we're really just pulling in different numbers from different pages, and we're going to put it all together and find different weights and different indexes. Okay. Very simple. Once I pull it up and once I start doing it, it's really just going to come right back to you guys, because it's just one of those more simple things that you do as far as your flight plan goes. Okay. All right. So with weight and balance, we are going to start filling out the weight and balance sheet by inserting our BOW, which is our basic operating weight. We're going to just work through our weight and balance sheet. So this kind of reminds you of all the different things as far as weight and balance and what goes into the sheet, but it's pretty straightforward. Okay, once we get doing it. Zoom out just a bit. So remember, this is the weight and balance sheet, not that one, this one. Here's our weight and balance sheet. I don't know why it keeps going back. Sorry. So I'm just going to start filling out this top part. It's really, honestly, just kind of rinse, wash, and repeat over and over again. Okay. Now this date, this is the date that we're going to use from our flight plan. So don't worry about using today's date. Just get the date from your flight plan. So March 14th, 2018 for flight plan 1. So March 14th, 2018. Okay. And we need that specific date from your flight plan because as we get into passenger weights, we have different weights with summer and winter. So we need to know if we're using summer weights or if we're using winter weights. Okay. So that's why we need that date from your flight plan. This is flight plan 1. All right, MTOW, MTOW, max takeoff weight. What is the max takeoff weight for the CRJ 700? You tell me. I don't know if you're typing it or not. I can't see that page.
75,000.
Thank you. All right, we are going from K10 over to ASLC. That is covered in snow right now. Our Minto, our minimum fuel for takeoff, or our minimum takeoff fuel. Okay, Minto. Now, you get to this point, and I always tell people you can do it one of two ways. Okay, when you get to Minto right here, you can just go find your fuel calculation right now, or you can wait until you get down here to the fuel section. Okay. So either way, you're going to figure out your fuel calculation. I personally like to just do it right now. So it's like I get to this Minto and I just want to just figure out my fuel. So coming back to this weight and balance page that we've been working with, right? This fuel calculation, it's the very last step. So adding in your last two steps, I should say, you're going to figure out your fuel calculation. So very easy as far as fuel calculation for this class. We keep it at an average fuel burn for our estimates right now. To be able to calculate our fuel burn, we're going to use our average fuel burn of 4,000 pounds for the first hour, and then 3,000 pounds for every hour after that. Okay, so 4,000 pounds for the first hour, 3,000 pounds every other hour. Okay, every hour after that. So in our example, we're going to use our average burn of 4,000 pounds because our flight is less than 1 hour, right? Our flight is 56 minutes. Pro tip, do this on a calculator. Pro tip for every single calculation, do it on a calculator. So to find out our fuel burn, we're going to take that 4,000, we're going to divide it by 60 because we're going to change that to a burn per minute, right? Again, like I said before, we're going to take a lot of different numbers and multiply by 60, divide by 60 because we need minutes. So we're going to take 4,000, divide by 60. That's going to give us a burn per minute, which is this 66.66667. Now we're going to take that and we're going to multiply it by our estimated time en route, which is that 56 minutes, right? So we get a burn per minute and then we multiply that by how many minutes we're flying. So 3733.3333. Now this is where when you get to fuel and you get a decimal with fuel, always round up. Okay, fuel is something that we always lean on the side of caution. Always, always, always. Okay. So when you get a decimal with fuel like this, even though it's 0.3 and naturally we would just round down, when you're doing fuel calculation, always round up. So 3733.3, we will round it up to 3734. Okay. So that is our en route burn. That is just our burn. Now remember what Minto is comprised of is burn, alternate, and reserve, right? When you get into your practical exam, during your oral exam, you'll get that question. What is, according to the FAR, what is minimum fuel for takeoff? Well, that's when they want you to spout off the long version saying, enough fuel to get to your destination, thereafter to fly to your furthest alternate, thereafter to fly 45 minutes at normal cruise consumption, right? They want that long version when they ask according to the FAR. When we're talking about Minto, just right here, all we say is burn, alternate, and reserve, right? So we just figured out our burn, 3734. So on here, I'm just going to come up here really quick and put 3734 for burn. Now, our alternate, okay? Add in your reserve and alternate fuel values. For an alternate, you'll follow the above steps, but you're going to use the distance from your destination to your alternate, right? Your destination to your destination alternate. For this example, we have no alternate. We just need to add in the reserve fuel. We will use an average reserve fuel burn of 2,500 pounds. That is across the board for our class. That never changes, okay? The reserve fuel is always 2,500 pounds. So with our fuel, there's our burn. We don't have an alternate. And then our reserve is 2,500 pounds, okay? So we take that burn plus that reserve, and that is going to give us our Minto. 3734 plus 2,500, 6234. That's Minto right there. There you go. There is Minto. So 6234 right there for Minto. You guys are going to get lots of practice with fuel calculation. So Just remember the big thing that you have to figure out is really just your burn. When you do have an alternate, it's going to be the same process. But instead of that first hour, which is that 4,000 pounds, your alternate is going to be considered part of your second hour or every hour after, which is 3,000 pounds for a full hour. Okay. That's the only difference. And then reserve is always that 2,500. Okay. Denver, Salt Lake, Minto 6234. We don't have any alternates, right? Don't worry about these signatures. Now our tail number, we do need our tail number on our flight plan, 748 Sierra Kilo. 748 Sierra Kilo. We need that specific tail number because every aircraft weighs a little bit differently. Okay. And so we need that our specific tail number so we can find the bow for it, the basic operating weight, and the specific index for that aircraft. Okay, now let's do our passenger numbers really quick. Our adults, our children, if we have any infants, it's going to tell you right here at the top of your flight plan. We have 52 adults and we have 12 kids. 52 adults right here. I'm going to make it aesthetically pleasing for myself. 12 kids. And we don't have any infants. You can leave it blank or you can put 0 or whatever. 52 plus 12. That's an easy calculation that I don't have to actually think about. Okay, so 64 total passengers. Now, with weights, this is why we needed that date, right? So with weights, 52 adults. We're going to come over here to passenger weights. Now, March 14th, summer weights don't start until May 1st. So we are going to be in winter weights. So 52 adults. We're going to come down to 52, and it is 10,140 pounds. So 10,140 pounds for 52 adults. Now we have 12 kids. And kids are down here in the bottom right corner. For winter, 87. So 87 times 12 kids, 1,044. And if you guys are doing these calculations along with me, let me know if I mess up, please. That would be great. Because I mess up all the time. All right, so 1,044, I'm just going to add that 10,140 to it. 11,184, that is our weight for our passengers. All right, I'm just going to follow this black arrow right here. Okay, this little arrow pointing to the second line. And just going to put in that passenger weight right there. Now, this top line is for our bow, our basic operating weight. Now we get to go find it. For 748 Sierra Kilo, we're going to go to the performance charts. Okay. Remember, with the performance charts, whenever we say it, we mean this. With our logo on here, the very first page, these are the performance charts, right? So come down to the table of contents. That very first one, CRJ 700 basic operating weight, or the bow, and the index. Okay. All right, 748. Here's the bow, here's the index. So 44848 and then 71.5. 44848 and 71.5. Okay. All right, now we're just going to make our way down with the calculations with all the different weights. So we found the weight for the passengers, but now we need to find the index for the passengers. Okay. And to be able to do that, we need to go to the very last page with that has our pin chart right here. So we're going to find the index for our passengers now. So adults, we have 52 adults. We have 12 kids. Eventually that is going to equal 64 passengers. Okay. Now remember, we always tell people, remember that the CRJ 700 aircraft is very nose heavy. So we load from the back to the front to keep it the most balanced. So with these parentheses here, this is the max amount of passengers per zone. Okay. So in zone F, we're going to start with 10 right there. And then 12 and 12. And I'm just going to keep going until I equal 64. I'll make it look pretty later. So 48, 58, and 6. That's for me. This is for me. Okay. All right. So there is 64 passengers loaded from the back to the front. Now we're going to go find the individual index for each zone. Okay. And that is in our performance charts as well. So go back to the table of contents. The second one, passenger index table right here. Here's our passenger index table, all the different zones. Remember, stay with this central table right here. Don't ever look at this bottom table, okay? Don't ever look at it. It'll make things way too confusing. So just stick with this middle table right here for the individual index of each zone with however many passengers, okay? All right, so since we loaded from the back to the front, I'm just gonna keep going back to the front, okay? Zone F is 10, oh, not right there, right there. Zone F, 10, so 6.8, and then 2.8, negative 3.1, 2.8 and negative 3.1. As we keep going, negative 8.5, negative 13.9. And this last one, we only have 6 passengers in the front right here. So zone A is negative 9.6. All right, now I'm going to add up all my negative numbers, all my positive numbers, and then I'm going to add them together and get my total index for my passengers in general. Negative 35.1. Add a positive 9.6 to it. Negative 25.5. So there's my index right here. Okay. Pretty straightforward with a pin chart. Just load from the back to the front. Find the index for each zone. Add up your negatives, your positives, add those two together, and that will give you your total index for passengers. So negative 25.5. And we'll come back up to our weight and balance, and we'll put that negative 25.5 right there in the negative column. All right, now moving on. Aft cargo. Again, nose heavy aircraft, so we try to load everything in the back first. We'll fill that up first, and then if we need to, we'll go into the forward cargo. Aft cargo, now we need to know how many bags we're going to load. So bags, we have 65 bags. If we had any other cargo, it would be listed, but 65 bags right here. So over here on this left side, you have the average bag weights. So 65 bags is right here in the center, 1,950. Well, our max in the aft cargo is 3740, so we can fit everything into the aft. So 1950, and I put enough spaces in there. There you go. And for the index for the aft cargo, that's over here on this right side in the center. It says cargo aft. 1950, just going to come down, and that index for 1950 is 12.9, a positive 12.9. Okay, nothing in the forward. You can leave that blank, or you can put a 0 there. If we had an observer, it would be listed here. Okay, 1 observer. We do not have an observer. Again, you leave it blank or put a 0. I don't care. Now we're going to we're going to bring down our negative over here. And now we just do basic math calculations, right? Just addition, subtraction, nothing too complicated yet. So now we're going to take all these weights right here. We're going to add them together. And then we're going to take our indexes and add them together. Okay, and that's going to give us our 0 fuel weight and index. 44848 plus 11184 plus 1950 equals 57982. 57982. There you go. All right, for our index, just going to add these positives together really quick and then take away that negative. So 71.5 plus 12.9 equals 84.4 right here. Now we're going to subtract that 25.5, 58.9. That is our 0 fuel weight index. Okay, 58.9. Now, we already figured out our fuel, 6234. So we can just put the 6284 right there. Now we need the index for the fuel. And that is over here on this right side, the very first column over here on the right side. 84, sorry, 34. 6234. Okay, coming down. We have 6,000 and we have 6,500. Okay. Well, guess what? Look at those indexes. They're exactly the same. It's negative 2.7. Very nice. Convenient. Negative 2.7. Bring down that negative number right here. Remember, this is a fuel index for the burn, alternate, and reserve. Okay. That is the fuel index for that total Minto right there. All right, takeoff weight and index. Now, again, more addition, right? I have this index pulled up right here, so I'll just do the index really quick. So 58.9, and we'll subtract that 2.7. So 56.2 right there. And 57982 plus 6234, 64 to 16. All right. Okay, now landing weight and index. Landing weight and index is just a little bit different because then you have to ask yourself, what am I landing with? Okay, what am I landing with? Well, I'm planning on landing with my aircraft, of course. I'm planning on landing with my passengers. I'm planning on landing with their bags. I'm planning on landing with all of that, plus what fuel though? What fuel am I planning on landing with? So thinking about your fuel here, well, our burn is 3734. Are we planning on landing with any burn though? We're planning on burning that off. Right? That's our burn. So to get from Denver to Salt Lake, that is our burn. So we're burning that fuel off, but we would land with any alternate fuel and our reserve fuel. Okay. Well, we don't have an alternate for this flight. So our reserve fuel. So what we do is you can do it 2 different ways. Okay. if you start at this takeoff weight, all you have to do is subtract the burn. Okay, just the burn, which is that 37.34. So 64.82. Right there. Now, you can start at the zero fuel weight, 57.982, and add the fuel that you're planning on landing with, right? So, which is, in this case, it's the 2,500. Either way gets you to that landing weight. So if you start at zero fuel weight, you add your alternate in your reserve fuel. If you start with your takeoff weight, you subtract your burn. Okay, two different ways. And this will make a lot more sense when you actually do it next week. Okay. All right. Really quick, this index, and then we're going to graph it out. Okay. All right, this index. We have an index for landing weight. Now, remember, what are we landing with? We're landing with the aircraft, the passengers, the bags, and alternate and reserve fuel, right? So with the index, we're going to come back to the zero fuel weight index and just think, okay, what fuel am I landing with? Well, in this case, I'm only landing with 2,500 pounds. So this fuel index for 2,500 is negative 1.5. So I'll subtract 1.5 here. And 57.4 is my landing index. Okay. If this doesn't make sense right now, that's totally fine. Totally fine. Trust me. You will get it. Okay. But again, you're just asking yourself, what am I landing with? All right, let's graph it out really quick, and then we will be done with the first half of Flight Plan 1. So really quick, we're going to graph out the zero fuel weight in index, takeoff weight in index, and landing weight in index, just to make sure that we are in the central area here. So 57.9, almost 58 on the index, or on the weight, and then coming over on the index is 58.9. So we're going to put a Z for zero fuel weight and index, somewhere around there. And takeoff weight, we're going to put a T, so 64.2 and then 56.2. So 64, a little above 64, and then 56.2. We're going to put a T right here. All right, and then L, landing weight and index, 60.4, 60 and a half about, and then 57.4. 60 and a half, and then 57-ish. So right about there. Well, we're pretty much dead center, right? So we are balanced. That's great. We can take off. So we graph it out to double check ourselves with our max weights and also to make sure that we are balanced. And then really quick, the very last step is this MAC percentage, this mean error chord. Very simple, okay? Don't overthink this either. Find your T, okay, on the graph, find your T, go straight up from it and go to the nearest number on this top line. So T, straight up from T, and it is 23% right here. Okay, we'll use our MAC percentage at the very, very end with our takeoff stab trim setting. Okay, and it's a takeoff stab trim setting, so therefore we go with the takeoff weight and index. Okay, but there is weight and balance. You guys will get this down so fast next week, trust me. All right, so we just did weight and balance. Tomorrow we are going to finish the rest of this. We're going to pick a flight level. We're going to have fun with ISA. We're going to do our IFR flight plan with the performance numbers. And then we're just going to fill out everything else and be done. Okay. We are going to, great job, guys. Great job. Did great tonight. This is why I said read what Jaden posted, because it's really just sit back, relax, just kind of observe. And it's just an introduction to flight planning. Okay. Just so that you guys don't feel blindsided next week when we start to dig a little bit deeper into flight planning. And we really just walk you through every single little step. Okay. So go have a good night. We'll finish flight plan 1 tomorrow night. And then we'll probably finish a little bit early. And then after that, I'll take any questions that you have for me. Any question about flight planning, any questions about St. George, any questions at all. Okay. But go have a good night. I'll stay on a few extra minutes if anyone has any questions for me, but go have a good night. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Have a good night, Allison.
You too.
Thanks, Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Good night.